Jenson will make his NASCAR debut at Circuit Americas. Kimi Raikkonen will be returning to Project 91 at Circuit of the Americas. Hendrick Motorsports is returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2023. And Eric Jones could be among the candidates who could drive the 4-car for Stewart-Haas Racing. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to go ahead and start by talking about Swift Transportation. As it was announced yesterday afternoon, Swift Transportation is going to sponsor Blaine Perkins for multiple races starting this weekend at Phoenix Raceway. Word on the street is that they're expected to sponsor for 11 races this season. Really exciting stuff. Amazing. We have a new sponsor come into play. Harris Slew decided the paint scheme. I have to say, Harris Slew did an amazing and incredible job. And I'm excited to see that they have a new sponsor for this weekend here at Phoenix and for multiple races this season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Xfinity. As Adamson reported on Wednesday morning that Xfinity is adding an endorsement deal with Dale Jr. to its NASCAR presence, and it started off by having Earnhardt surprising an Xfinity Rewards customer at Charlotte. Earnhardt was driving the car and he basically surprised a customer. I think that is really exciting that they're doing that. Of course, we'll talk about Xfinity here later in this episode, but really excited to see how Dale Jr. is getting involved with Xfinity. Maybe if Junior Motorsports ever decides to go to Cup, maybe Xfinity could be a sponsor. We're not sure yet at this point, but really excited to see that Xfinity is going to be increasing their presence, and they're going to be working with Dale Jr. going forward. Really exciting stuff overall for sure. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about Chicago Street Course. Now, we do have quite a few stories around the Chicago Street Course, but the first one is around that there is going to be a new ad that's going to be debuting at Phoenix Raceway. There's been multiple Chicago Street Course ads that have been showing up since the start of the season and since when they announced this last year, but now we have ads really that will be debuting, and it will be basically happening until we get to the weekend of the Chicago Street Course event, which of course is the July 1st and July 2nd weekend. This is really cool ad, in my opinion. I think did a really awesome job on it, and I'm excited. I'm not as excited about the event race themselves, but I think the ads look very good. In my honest opinion, it looks very solid. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the West Coast Stock Car 2023 Class Hall of Fame, as it is expected to be announced, and I believe it's already been announced. I think it will be talked about on today. So the people that are getting inducted into this Hall of Fame are Kurt Busch, Matt Crafton, Kevin Harvick, Brent Kading, and Lynn St. James. All legends of the respective motorsports. Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick, NASCAR Cup Series champions. Matt Crafton, a 3-time Truck Series champion. Not sure I know much about Brent Kading, but Lynn St. James, legend of her, what she does. And in my opinion, it's a really great Stock Car Class Hall of Fame, and they all deserve to be in the West Coast Stock Car Class Hall of Fame. All legends of the respective series. Congratulations, all of them, in getting inducted into the West Coast Stock Car 2023 Class Hall of Fame. Really exciting stuff for sure, and really great to see that they've been inducted into their respective Hall of Fames. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jordan Taylor. As Jordan Taylor went on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on Wednesday, and he says he is psyched for his NASCAR debut next month at Circuit Americas. Jordan Taylor, of course, will be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut at Dakota, driving the number 9 for Hendrick Motorsports in substitution for Chase Elliott, who will be out at least for 6 races due to a fractured left tibia. Jordan Taylor, of course, a legend of the GT world and a legend of the IMSA world, who's won the Rush 24, won a lot of major events, won championships in IMSA. Jordan Taylor, I think, is someone that is really going to do a great job. He's got a lot of experience with the Corvette team, and of course, he's working with the Garage 56 entry team as well. This is really exciting stuff that he's getting this opportunity, and overall, I'm very excited to see he's also making his debut. I think he's going to do an excellent and a really good job in his debut. I'm excited to see that he will be making his debut at Circuit Americas. In fact, it's like 2 weeks from now, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be really exciting stuff overall, in my honest opinion, really exciting stuff for sure. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about COTA. As COTA has announced that they're going to be adding a 50-minute practice session on Friday at 1:35 p.m. Central Standard Time, or 1:05 Central Standard Time at Circuit of the Americas. The big reason why they're adding this practice session is when rumors that they were going to do this is because of the fact that they're going to be doing some more tests with the road course package. Obviously, later today, when you're watching this, they will be having a test later this afternoon and early evening at Phoenix to get testing on the next-gen car for the short track package, an extra 50-minute session. And the goal for this practice session, is to try to fix some of the issues with the next-gen car on the short tracks, which is what they've done. 2-inch rear spoiler, and also removal of 3 engine strakes and 3 diffuser strakes as well, and 30% reduction in downforce. Overall, I'm glad that Code is having this extra practice session. In my opinion, we should just have 50-minute practice sessions for every single week and get rid of the split groups. I think it should be for every single week, and starting now, just make 50-minute practice sessions, get rid of the split groups, and stop with that, and have just qualifying session, normal qualifying session like do for all the basically the Super Speedway package, and don't have extra rounds as well. Just have 1 round of qualifying like Xfinity Series does generally, except on the Super Speedways, and just make it like that going forward, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Hendrick Motorsports. As it was reported by Adam Stern last night that Hendrick Motorsports has entity affiliate with Hendrick bought just over 82 acres from Charlotte LLC. A portion of land is expected to include the site of 2 advanced manufacturing plants. Now, what could this mean for the future of Hendrick Motorsports? Well, from what people are saying in the comments, I think it's got a lot to do with military vehicles, if I'm not mistaken. Not too sure what's entitled on the map. But I was thinking maybe now they could go ahead and use a manufacturing plant to maybe focus on IMSA and also maybe IndyCar, because we know that Jeff Gordon has said that Hendrick is interested in getting involved in other motorsports. We know they're interested in going, of course, to IndyCar. Of course, they're going to be affiliated with Kyle Larson, with Aaron McLaren, and also they have some interest in IMSA, where they had a Hendrick back entry with the Action Express racing car up until this year. I think it's really interesting to see what's going to happen with Hendrick Motorsports going forward, because I think it's a story to watch for sure, and we'll see what happens going forward. But interesting that Hendrick Motorsports is getting involved in that front, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead to on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about the Chicago Street Course. Now, it's reported by Nate Ryan, of course, works at NBC Sports, that Tuesday City Council meeting drew backlash about NASCAR's impact on Taste of Chicago. Yesterday, the Sun-Times called on Lori Lightfoot to fix it before leaving office. Of course, if you've been paying attention to the story, Lori Lightfoot is no longer going to be the mayor of Chicago, and of course, she was behind the Chicago Street Course event. I am going to say this about the future of the Chicago Street Course event. With how much opposition there is, and the fact that Brandon Johnson and Paul Vansor, the 2 candidates who are going to be going for mayor of Chicago, in my opinion, I think that the future of this event is going to be in question past this year. I think the event will go through this year. I don't expect any issues on that front. We're a few months away from it now, and if they were to back out, they would have broken the 180-day clause. And we're basically about 120 days from the race now, about 110 days away, as a matter of fact, from when the race is supposed to happen. In my opinion, I think there's a very good chance that this will be the last race at Chicago. It's going to be a one-and-done thing. And then I think personally that you're going to see Road America or Chicagoland get the date back, because I think that there's so much opposition right now and so much anger around the Chicago Street Course race that, in my opinion, I think that they're going to go ahead and stop doing it after this season. So I think this is going to be the last year of the event, in my opinion. I think this is going to be the only time the Chicago Street Course will happen. I think that they will, again, it could go away this year. Nothing's out of possibilities, but in my opinion, I think that this is going to be the only time Chicago Street Course happens. I think it gets canceled after this year with how much opposition there is against the Chicago Street Course. And now we're going ahead to on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Richard Childress. As Richard Childress spoke about last month, I think during Daytona Media Days, or during the race at Auto Club, he spoke on the acquisition of Kyle Busch. Now, Richard says that he was planning to run a second car and keep Tyler Reddick in a third car, but Austin Dillon played a major role and said, hey, Pop, we should try to acquire Kyle Busch. Obviously, we had the Joe Gibbs Racing sweepstakes at the time, where Kyle Busch was basically either going to be back at Joe Gibbs Racing or not back at Joe Gibbs Racing. But when Oracle decided to back out of sponsoring Joe Gibbs Racing, Kyle Busch became an open book, and there were a lot of teams involved trying to get Kyle Busch. You had teams like 2311, Super Haas Racing, and also Colleague Racing that were involved in trying to get Kyle Busch. I think Kyle Busch has really made a home at Richard Childress Racing, and we've already seen that Kyle Busch had some success by winning at Auto Club and has been very fast, except this past weekend at Vegas, where he still kind of struggled, but wasn't somewhat of a contender for a top 10 at that race. I think that the acquisition of picking up Kyle Busch has been a big factor for Richard Childress Racing's success so far this season, and I think that you're seeing that the big reason why the team has really shown some huge improvement and some great improvement over the last few years. It's really exciting stuff overall for sure, and I think that you're going to see Richard Childress Racing continue to only get better as time goes on. So in my opinion, it's really exciting stuff, really awesome stuff, and I'm very happy to see that they've gone ahead and basically picked up Kyle Busch because I think it's huge for the sport overall, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. As, like Circuit Americas, there are also going to be 50-minute practice sessions for the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series races as well as Chicago Street Course. This one does not surprise me considering the fact that it's a new course, and NASCAR said if we go to a new area, basically to a new track, or basically the championship weekend, that they were going to be having 50-minute practice sessions. Like I already said with COTA, though, I think personally that there should be basically, regardless, there should be 50-minute practice sessions for every single race. But I'm glad at least for Chicago Street Course that they're doing it. It makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you're not going to have Cup guys run the Xfinity Series race at Chicago Street Course since they don't want anybody really getting an advantage. That's why Austin Hill's not driving for Beard Motorsports. But I think it's really awesome. There is going to be a 50-minute practice session for that event because I think it's going to be really, just in my opinion, I think that there should be 50-minute practice sessions altogether, and I think this is a really great decision on their part to go ahead and just go ahead and have 50-minute practice sessions for every single race going forward. But it's good that they're kind of heading toward that direction. I think it's a great decision overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the choose rule. As it was announced yesterday evening that the choose rule will be used at road courses starting at Circuit of the Americas. So that means that every single type of track, whether that's the dirt track, I think, except maybe Bristol Dirt, I think Bristol Dirt also, I think, is going to have the choose rule, if I'm not mistaken. All the speedway tracks, all the super speedway tracks, and every type of track will be having the choose rule impacted. Let me say this about the choose rule. I think the choose rule has been a really awesome addition to NASCAR races in general. It gives everybody an opportunity to restart in a different position, and I think it's really created some amazing restarts since this choose rule got implemented in late 2020. And like I said, I think it's been a great acquisition, the thing that they brought in. They had it at short tracks, and it's worked out for them, so NASCAR's like, let's bring the choose rule in. And I think it's actually going to create some really awesome restarts on the road courses as well. And it just makes a lot of sense to have it all across the board, have it at every type of track, instead of just having it on one type of track or certain tracks. Let's have it at every type of tracks. That would make a lot more sense overall. And I think that they overall made a very good decision to have for every type of track that there. So I think it's a really great decision that they've done that to add it, because I think it's going to create some really interesting strategy for the restarts as well. They're making great decisions over there, and it's really exciting to see the choose rule, which I think is going to make Circuit Americas exciting, which, trust me, there's a lot of excitement for Chicago for the race at COTA building as we speak at this particular moment. I think it's really exciting stuff for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about TV ratings. Now, Peva Stone put out a tweet yesterday about TV ratings, and T basically said that someone asked on a radio show why we care about attendance figures and TV ratings for all sports in general so much. Well, I'm going to tell you why we care about TV ratings and attendance figures, especially on the NASCAR side of things. The big reason, one of the reasons we really care about TV ratings and attendance figures matters and TV ratings matter because it really tells how the health of your sport is going. And attendance really is a big indication to health of the sport. We've seen huge attendance figures, huge increase in attendance at a lot of races. Last year we had 6 or 7 sellouts. We had 2 sellouts to start out 2023, and attendance, in my opinion, has been very solid for races to start 2023. Now, for NASCAR, TV ratings are generally very, very important because, especially for this year, because how the TV ratings are will be a huge indication how much money we're going to get in the next TV deal. Now, granted, I think the fact that Chase Elliott isn't going to be around, and at least for the foreseeable future, probably the ratings are going to go down in a pretty major way. But in my honest opinion, TV ratings matter a lot, and attendance figures matter for racing and in sports in general, because you need to basically have an opportunity to see how your sport is doing and how the sport is going. So in my opinion, it's very important that we look at TV ratings, especially as fans, and I think it's a very important decision as fans we take a look at TV ratings in general. I think it's very important that we watch TV ratings long term. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Meyer-Shank Racing. Now, it was announced on Wednesday afternoon that Meyer-Shank Racing has been handed some very, very significant penalties. Meyer-Shank Racing, of course, won the 2023 Rolex 24, but now their win is in controversy because of the fact that they apparently were manipulating tire pressure data. The team has been penalized 200 team and driver points. They have a loss of prize money, Mike Shank has in place on probation to June 30th of 2023. And also the lead engineer of the team, I can't remember the guy's name exactly, but the lead engineer of the team has also been basically, his hard card is basically gone, and he basically has been suspended for the rest of the year. Now, they get to keep the win and the watches, which in my personal opinion, if you're cheating as much as they were manipulating tire pressure data, you probably should not be able to keep the win, just for very, very fair, which I think would have given a win to Chip Ganassi Racing. I think Chip Ganassi or Jordan Taylor or the Wayne Taylor team, I think, finished second in the race, if I'm not mistaken. If a team cheats, they should absolutely lose the win, especially if they're manipulating tire pressure data. Apparently, Meyer Shank Racing released a statement, and they're very disappointed with the situation, but they understand and they accept the penalties, and they said they also have fired the individual that was doing that. But I would imagine there are probably more people involved with that. It took them a long time, though, to really figure this out, which is something I'm kind of surprised with, is the fact that it took so long to figure out who exactly was doing it, and it probably should have been figured out sooner, but apparently I think HPD kind of snitched on them a little bit. But if you're manipulating or cheating as much as they were and manipulating tire pressure data, it took almost 2 months for them to figure this out. But if you're cheating like this, you should not be able to keep the win, in my opinion. So it is definitely frustrating to see that the team basically cheated to get the win. Their win is going to look like they basically cheated. But in my honest opinion, it is what it is. I personally think they should lose the win and get the watches second place, and then give the win to the other team. I wish they could find a way to basically get the system figured out quicker, because this should not have taken almost 2 months to get figured out. It should have been figured out much sooner, but that is just my honest opinion on that. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Xfinity. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday evening, late evening, that Xfinity is in the second to last year of its 10-year Xfinity entitlement, but isn't commenting yet on if it will renew past 2024. Their goal is still to basically, like the last 8 years, is still put out a really great product and focus on the customers that are involved with Xfinity. Now, like I mentioned, Xfinity is on a 10-year deal that started back in 2015 after Nationwide left after 2014, being the entitlement sponsor for the secondary series. Xfinity started doing it in 2015, and their contract, like I mentioned, ends at the end of 2024. It would really love for Xfinity, if Xfinity was to leave, and if they do potentially come back, there's a chance they could come back. But what if Xfinity leaves and decides to leave at the end of 2024 and just focus on being the premier partner of the NASCAR Cup Series? Well, there's one sponsor I'd like to see come back, and that is Busch. Busch was basically the main partner of the series from about, I think the beginning of the time, like 1982 or 1983, all the way up to the end of the 2007 season, and then Nationwide took over in 2008. I would love for Busch to come back. It would be a great throwback. Plus, very recently, Craftsman came back, and it's also sponsoring the Truck Series at this particular moment now. And I have to say that having Craftsman back has been really, really great to see, being part of the Truck Series. We've seen Craftsman get really, really involved back in racing in general. Of course, they got bought up by Stanley Tools and all those companies that are involved in that. But I would love for Busch to come back and be the entitlement sponsor for the second series if it isn't to return. I think if Xfinity does return, though, I'd be also okay with that. I'm going to be fine with Xfinity coming back. It's very noticeable now. It's been around for a long time. It's been almost around for 10 years at this particular point, which is the second longest entitlement at this point for the NASCAR series, because Nationwide was around 2008, 2014, which is about 7 seasons. Then Xfinity took over in a 10-year deal. I think there definitely is a chance that it could return in 2025 for sure, but it's one thing we'll have to watch and see. But there's definitely a chance it could return, but we're not sure yet at this point. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about stages. Now, it was reported by Bob Pockrass yesterday that at Circuit Americas and other road courses, with no cautions after stages, NASCAR won't wave a green checker flag when the stages do come to close. Basically, the reason is so that they end up basically avoiding confusion, so that people don't think that we have a caution when basically at the end of the stages, and they're just going to keep a normal checker flag. This is something I personally think when it comes to stages. I personally think that every single race should be like this, where it's road courses or even the oval tracks. And I think that one of the reasons why that I personally think that we should not be having cautions thrown at the end of stages and we should just keep the race going is so that the flow of racing continues. One of the reasons, my biggest gripes with stage racing is with the stage cautions. I don't personally hate stages, but I hate stage cautions. If they got rid of stage cautions in general for every single racetrack, I really know the reason why they don't want to, but if they got rid of stage cautions at every type of track, including road courses, we would be in a really good shape for better racing in general, and the flow race would continue. Plus, you would save the teams money, and you would save them time, you would save them pit stops, and you would save them time on the racetrack, and you don't have the possibility of tearing up equipment on the racetrack, especially if the natural flow. Sometimes you're going to have races where drivers completely dominate. It happens. You're not going to have always races where it's going to be barn burners. Sometimes you're going to have drivers going to pull out 10 to 15 second leads. And that's a normal thing in racing. It normally happens. Maybe the racing isn't the most exciting, but sometimes you're going to have races that are not the most exciting. And I'd rather have the flow of the race continue on and better strategy. I'm glad they're doing it at road courses, but I'd rather have the strategy be way better than what we got. But I'm glad road courses start in the right direction. I think you're going to see eventually change. I think that there's so many people that want it gone in general, the stage cautions, that I think it's going to get changed in the future. But that's just my honest opinion. I think there's a good chance it could change in the future. And I think it hopefully will. At least it's starting at the road courses, though, and is a really good start in the right direction, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Nashville Fairgrounds. Now, Matt Weaver put out a tweet on Wednesday evening that a National Fairgrounds vote on SMI acquiring the lease to National Fairgrounds and bringing a NASCAR event to the facility plus improvement could be held this upcoming Tuesday and early next week. This vote is going to be very, very important for many, many reasons. And why is this important? Well, like I mentioned, if this vote does get approved, and unlike Chicago Street Course, a lot more support for the National Fairgrounds, especially from the Fair Board generally. There's a lot more approval from that really do want this. This will be really, really big, and there's a lot more people in the national area that generally want this event. But it doesn't come without its opposition. You have a group called CARE that put out a tweet yesterday. Matt Weaver put out the tweet basically saying a lot of reasons why, and they kind of put out a fan. I just don't understand why they chose this fan. It's kind of sad that they did that. So if you're going to put opposition, you choose someone's against it, not for racing. But the reasons listed I didn't think made a lot of sense, saying that a track is near the area and it's in the area. Well, it's 45 minutes from the racetrack, close to an hour away to the racetrack. Noise pollution, it's going to be loud, but obviously that they've got mufflers that they're testing currently at the moment. And there's just a lot of reasons I don't agree. Plus, the track's been around since 1904. Next year is going to be the 120th anniversary of the track quintessentially. Track's been around for way longer than most fans. They really didn't see this opposition for the soccer stadium when it came into play. So I think it's going to get approved. Again, it's going to be very important to watch this. It likely gets approved next week, in my opinion. I don't see anything changing. I would be sad if it didn't get approved, but I think it will end up getting approved here in the future. So one thing to watch for sure. Keep your eyes on that because I think it's very important to watch a fairground approval, and we'll see what happens. And I do think it will get approved. We'll have to wait and see what happens to it. But like I said, I think it will get approved here in the not-so-distant future. I think it does end up getting approved. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Anthony Alfredo. As it was announced yesterday that Anthony Alfredo will drive the 78 for Lift Fast Motorsports for 2 Cup Series races in 2023. The first race will be at Richmond. The second race is still to be determined and to be announced in the foreseeable future. This is not a surprise by any shape or form. There's been a lot of rumors that he was going to make a couple starts with the team, considering the fact there had been a scheme that had been leaked with the Do-Wipes scheme, and Do-Wipes has been a big long-term partner of Anthony Alfredo's for the last few seasons. So I'm not surprised there. This will also be the first time that Anthony Alfredo has competed in the NASCAR Cup Series since 2021 when he drove full-time for Farmer Motorsports in the number 38 car. Anthony Alfredo, in my opinion, is a very talented driver. He's had a decent start to the NASCAR Xfinity Series season. He's had some pretty solid runs, and I think Anthony will do an okay job. We've seen Lift Fast Motorsports be a little bit more competitive, and I think that BJ, in my opinion, should either give it full-time to Anthony Alfredo next year or maybe Josh Bligging, considering both their drivers are with the Lift Fast Motorsports group this season. I am really excited to see that Anthony Alfredo is getting this opportunity to make some select cup starts. I don't think Anthony Alfredo is going to win. I think, well, not even close winners. I don't think Live Fast has that pace. But top 30s is definitely possible, especially with the talent Anthony Alfredo has. I think he's matured as a driver the last couple of years. And I think Anthony Alfredo will do a very solid job with Live Fast Motorsports. So I'm very excited about this. I'm really looking forward to seeing Anthony Alfredo is driving for Live Fast Motorsports, and I think he'll do a very solid job with the Live Fast Motorsports group, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to seeing him making it with some returns and making some starts in the Cup Series once again. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jonathan Davenport. As it was announced yesterday that Jonathan Davenport will make his NASCAR Cup Series debut at Bristol Dirt, driving the number 13 for Kaulig Racing. Now, there have been rumors that Jonathan Davenport was going to be making his debut. That's what I was expecting. What I was not expecting was that he'd be driving a pretty competitive car, because while Kaulig Racing is not like a Hendrick Motorsports or a Trackhouse Racing or a Rich Schultz Racing, Kaulig Racing is still a very, very solid and a pretty quick team. And Jonathan Davenport is a legend of dirt late model scene, has won a lot of championships in the dirt late model scene, has been part of the World of Outlaws late model scene as well, and won a lot of races in that league. I think that Jonathan Davenport is someone that you're going to have to watch, especially in the event. I knew there was a good chance he was going to run this race, but I didn't know what team he's going to run for. A lot of people thought he'd be lit fast in a 78 car, but now we know he'll be driving for Kaulig Racing, which also confirms there's confirmed 37 entries for the Bristol Dirt Race as well. So hopefully get some more interest for the Bristol Dirt Race, because I think that would be really, really fun to watch. I'm so excited to see you got Jonathan Davenport come in. I think that Jonathan Davenport's goal is, of course, to make the show. We get more than 40 entries, which I think he easily will be able to make the show of how much talent he has. And I think Jonathan Davenport will get at least a top 15 finish, or maybe even a top 10. I don't think he's going to win with that equipment, but I do think he's got a really good chance to be extremely competitive. And it's good to see we got another race with their 13 cars showing up. Obviously, Chandler is going to run select starts with Kaulig Racing in the 13 car, and hopefully we see this car run a lot more races than what they plan to schedule at the moment. Maybe they run the Chicago Street Course race, and they decide to run COTA as well. That'd be really, really fun. But I'm excited to see that Jonathan Davenport's coming into play, and I'm looking forward to see that he will make his NASCAR Cup debut at Bristol Dirt with Kaulig Racing. I'm really looking forward to his NASCAR Cup Series debut, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about William Byron. As it was announced yesterday early afternoon that William Byron is returning to Kyle Busch Motorsports for the first time since the 2016 season, driving a 51 for KBM. He will run 3 races with the team at HendrickCars.com backing him for those races. He will drive at Bristol Dirt, Darlington, and North Wilkesboro. Like I said, this will be the first time that William Byron has driven for Kyle Busch Motorsports since the 2016 season, when he drove the number 9 car with Liberty University on the car. It's also exciting to see that HendrickCars.com is coming to sponsor William Byron in those select races. William Byron, of course, is also coming off of winning at Las Vegas this past weekend, and had William Byron, blown back 2016, William Byron probably had the best truck all season long when he raced for KBM in that 2016 season, but lost due to an engine failure at the end of the year at Phoenix, and really that's one of the reasons why we had the playoff system get changed in 2017. I think William Byron's going to be very competitive. We've seen how fast this 51 truck has been. Kyle Busch won at Las Vegas with the truck, and I think William Byron, with his experience, I think he's going to run very, very well. And it's going to be good for him to get more experience in the Truck Series as well. And maybe we'll see Byron make some more starts in the Truck Series, because this is going to be the first time he's been with KBM in a long time, and I think he'll do a very, very solid job. I think he wins at least one race for sure this upcoming season in the Truck Series. I don't know if he'll win more, but I think for sure at least get one win in that number 51 truck, and I think he's going to do a really awesome job with the team. So I'm excited to see this. I'm so pumped to see that he will be making a return to the Truck Series with that team. I think he's going to do an excellent job with KBM, and like I said, this is going to be very fun to have him back in the Truck Series once again. I think he's going to be extremely competitive. I think that 51 truck is going to be really, really fast, really, really quick, cast some great speed, and I think William Byron has a fantastic runs with Kyle Busch Motorsports this season. I think he's going to do an excellent and a very good job in 2023 in his select Truck Series starts. And I'm really looking forward to those, and I'm excited about that for sure, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Junior Motorsports. Now, obviously, we've talked about Junior Motorsports quite a bit on this channel, and a big reason why I've talked about Junior Motorsports is because of the fact that Junior Motorsports has continued to talk about potentially jumping up to the Cup Series in the foreseeable future, and they are still interested in making a jump up to Cup. Now, Freddie Kraft spoke on the Door Bumper Clear Pockets about this a little bit and gave a little more indication, saying that it's no secret that Dale Jr. is still shopping around, is looking up, trying to acquire a charter for the foreseeable future. And obviously, one of the big names that continues to get brought up recently is Josh Berry. Now, obviously, Josh Berry is going to be substituting for Chase Elliott on all the oval tracks going forward, except at COTA when Jordan Taylor is going to drive. And I think one of the other big reasons why Josh Berry is part of the Junior Motorsports, and of course, Junior Motorsports does have association with Rick Hendrick, because Rick Hendrick is an owner of Junior Motorsports. But I think another big reason why you're seeing Josh Berry get these opportunities is because I think that Dale Jr. might be even considering a potential option to move Josh Berry up to the Cup Series and have him if they decide to jump up. Now, obviously, Junior Motorsports, if they're going to jump up the Cup, they need to acquire a charter. And charters right now are going through the roof currently at the moment. Now, there's a lot of talk about the charter system. There's potential that charters could get added in the future, and maybe those charters could be cheaper if teams are wanting to make the jump up the Cup. That could be a potential possibility if that does come into play. But another big thing that really interests me in regards to Junior Motorsports potentially jumping up the Cup is the fact that, of course, Josh Berry, I think, is a very, very talented driver. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, Josh Berry didn't have a really good debut. Well, Josh Berry, in my opinion, he had no simulator experience from what I understand and had no next-gen experience. So he's at a complete disadvantage. And from what I saw, he had top 10 lap times. But near the end of the race, he had throttle issues and throttle body issues, which did affect the team and affect the performance of the organization, how fast that organization was in the race that number 19 was. Because you look at Hendrick Motorsports, the other three drivers finished 1, 2, 3. Had Josh Berry had the pace and speed, he probably wouldn't have won, but he may have contended for top 15 and stayed on the lead lap. And the fact he didn't get any cautions in the race, because again, there was not a lot of yellows in the race, I think really helped that organization's performance overall. So, in my honest opinion, Junior Motorsports, do I think they'll jump up to the Cup Series? Yes, I absolutely think there's a good chance that they are going to jump up to the Cup Series in the future. I think my prediction is that they jump up next year, and I think they bring Josh Berry up. Josh does have some sponsorship from Bass Pro and other companies like the ones that sponsored him this year, and I like brand maybe other companies like could jump up with Josh Berry. That could be a possible option. But in my honest opinion, I think that you're going to see them jump up the Cup, and I think that you're going to see this happen here in the foreseeable future with that team jumping up the Cup, and I think you're going to bring Josh Berry up the Cup. I think that is going to happen, and I think we see that happen going forward, in my honest opinion. Now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the next-gen car. Now, Tyler Reddick was on the Dale Jr. Download very, very recently. At the 27-minute and 40-second mark, Tyler Reddick started talking about the next-gen car at Las Vegas. And Tyler Reddick says the car is slowly migrating back to the 550 package as teams continue to figure out the next-gen car. Unfortunately, this is not the news I wanted to hear, but unfortunately, it's kind of not a surprise. Because remember, this car initially was supposed to be a 550 car. But NASCAR changed it at the last minute in December of 2021 because the teams felt it was much better with the 670 package. And we saw really, really great racing last year. But I will say it did at Vegas, it did kind of feel like a 550 package race just a little bit. It wasn't a terrible race by any stretch of imagination, but I will also say the fact that one of the reasons why I did also feel like a 550 race is because of the colder temperatures and cooler and cloudier temperatures. Which does concern me a little bit, though, is the fact he's mentioned this because we saw, like I said, some really amazing intermediate racing in the 2022 season. And it does worry me about tracks like Kansas a little bit that put on fantastic races. Vegas put on not the greatest show, in my opinion, this time around, because Vegas can either put on a really good show or not a great show, or just a typical race where it isn't great, but isn't terrible. Sometimes Vegas is like that. It's just a typical race at Vegas. Last year, we had some great racing. This race wasn't as good as other ones, but it wasn't a terrible race. But one of the things I want to say is that outside of restarts, Vegas has basically a race, outside of restarts, the 550 package, in my opinion, wasn't the greatest overall. And I want to say that the racing itself on these types of tracks has at times been really, really good, but also sometimes the next-gen car doesn't always produce the greatest racing in the world. So in my honest opinion, when it comes to the 550 package, I do want to say that I don't want these cars to migrate back to 550. It does worry back a little bit. Maybe you do decide to go ahead and bring other types of cars in. I'm not entirely sure if they can find a way, maybe bring the short track package in, especially if it's successful. Find a way to lower the spoiler so we can get some pretty good racing overall going forward. That being said, I do really hope that we don't go back to the 550 package. It does worry worried me a little bit that we're headed back toward that direction as teams continue to figure it out. And it did kind of feel a little bit like a 550 race at times in the 2022 this race. So hoping NASCAR find a way to get the situation taken care of and figure this out going forward. It does frustrate. We're kind of headed toward that direction once again, and it does frustrate me a little bit. We're kind of headed toward back that direction because it was definitely frustrating sometimes to watch 550 racing because it was good at first, but once teams figured that out, racing got pretty bad. So in my opinion, it was definitely a little bit, felt like 550 race in some essence, but also didn't always feel like a 550 race. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Erik Jones and the possibility of going to the 4-car. Now, obviously, there's a huge sweepstakes going on at the moment on potential drivers who could drive the 4-car in the 2024 season. Now, why is this the case? Well, two big reasons. Number one, Kevin Harvick is retiring at the end of the 2023 season and jumping up to the Fox Sports booth full-time in 2024. The other side of things is when it comes to sponsorship. There's a lot of talk right now that Busch Beer might be leaving, Anheuser-Busch might be leaving Stewart-Haas Racing, either going to Trackhouse Racing or even maybe potentially RCR in the 2024 season. And there's a lot of drivers that have been in play for that 4-car. Now, Erik Jones' name has now been brought into conversations as well. And Jordan Bianchi mentions that if I'm Stewart-Haas Racing, I'm trying to go after Erik Jones. Now, Erik Jones, he knows it is under a multi-year contract with Legacy Motor Club. We sometimes know how contracts work, and contracts could be broken very, very easily. Erik Jones would be a massive pickup. If they were able to pick up Erik Jones, Stewart-Haas Racing would. I think that 4-car would actually still be very competitive. It would be a championship threat. I think Erik Jones is one of the most talented drivers currently in NASCAR at the moment and one of the most underrated drivers in my opinion. He has taken that 43 car over the last couple of years and has been the most competitive driver that 43 car has probably seen in a very, very long time. Probably since John Andretti, the last time that we saw a car this competitive, that 43 car be as competitive as it was. It won the Southern 500 in 2022. And you don't win 2 Southern 500s, because he's already won 2 of those, by the way. You don't win 2 Southern 500s if you're not a talented driver. You've got to be a great driver to be great at that racetrack. And Erik Jones knows how to get it done at those types of tracks. And I think he's one of the most underrated drivers. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, he's under a multi-year deal. But we already know at this point the Focus Factor, they're actually out of NASCAR completely. And we've seen over the last few weeks that Allegiant has been sponsoring Erik Jones. Now, granted, we're going to see Air Force sponsor Erik Jones for a few races, but it seems like there's been more sponsorship trouble at the 43 team than we really realized at this point. Granted, with Jimmy Johnson coming in, they could try to find a way to get sponsorship. But like I said, if I'm Stewart-Haas Racing, they need to try to find a way to get Erik Jones over at SHR. Erik Jones would be a great driver to bring into play, and I would love for him to get an opportunity to drive for Stewart-Haas Racing. Now, if Erik Jones doesn't become a possibility, who could be other candidates? Well, John Hunter Nemechek's name's been brought up in the conversations as of recently. We know that Zane Smith's name's been brought up in the contract. We know that John Hunter could go maybe over to Joe Gibbs Racing if Martin Truex Jr. retires. Zane Smith's under contract with Front Row, but Zane Smith went Ford probably love him. Maybe somehow Josh Berry gets scored away from Junior Motorsports, though I do think that Junior Motorsports wants to keep Josh Berry around long term. You obviously have other drivers in SHR's pipeline that could be possibilities. Riley Hurst is a possibility, considering he's got Monster Energy funding, and they might need someone with sponsorship funding, plus he's part of KHI Management. You've also got Cole Custer as a possibility. Cole wants to go back to Cup as soon as possible. Or maybe even somehow they try to get Hailie Deegan up. I know I mentioned Hailie Deegan quite a bit, but I think she would be on the last on the list of people that should get basically brought up, considering the fact she only has 1 Xfinity Series start, and I think she needs a lot more Xfinity Series starts with a good team before she would decide to go up. But in my honest opinion, it's going to be interesting to see who they choose. But if I had to choose, it would be between Erik Jones, John Hunter Nemechek, or Zane Smith. In my opinion, those are the 3 drivers that definitely should be considered as possible options for the future, in my opinion. Or maybe sound like try to core Kyle, not Kyle Busch, but in my opinion, I would love to see Erik Jones as central candidate for that ride going forward. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story in today's episode, as we are talking about Hendrick Motorsports. As Hendrick Motorsports has been expected to return to the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and they confirmed on Wednesday morning that they will be returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2023 for 4 Xfinity Series races in 2023. They will debut in a couple weeks for their seats, make their season debut in 2 weeks from now at Circuit Americas with William Byron. Kyle Larson is going to run 2 races, the first Xfinity Series race at Sonoma, and then Darlington, the last time you'll see Hendrick Motorsports, and then Alex Bowman will run Watkins Glen. Now, one omission is Chase Elliott not being on there, and a big reason is because I don't think they want to put Chase Elliott through that pressure and potentially get injured in a wreck. That's why Chase Elliott is not doing one, because if Chase Elliott had been available, they probably would have put Chase Elliott in that car. This is really exciting to see that Hendrick Motorsports is returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. That car was very, very strong. Every single time the car was on the racetrack, it was always competing for wins. William Byron almost won the race at Watkins Glen. He and Ty Gibbs took each other out near the end of the race, and Kyle Larson, the 88 car with HendrickCars.com on it, they were able to go on and win that race. At the Indy Road Course, we saw how strong that car really was at Alex Bowman. That car ended up finishing second. And we've seen how fast this car has been when you've had guys like Bowman in there. They didn't win last year. And then, of course, you go back to Kyle Larson at both Road America and Darlington. Larson had the dominant car at Road America, but lost late to Ty Gibbs, who have just had a stronger car near the end of the event, and you can think Cole Custer really playing a role into that. And then you go to Darlington, where Larson was in the winning battle and in contention to win that race. But unfortunately, Kyle Larson basically got in the battle, had a tire go down, and Noah Gragson went on to kind of steal the victory, though Noah Gragson did have one of the most dominant cars in that race before and deserved that win. They had fresher tires, but it was a really great finish, one of the best finishes, and Kyle Larson and Sheldon Creed were not mad at each other. Larson was actually happy near the finish and basically appreciated the great racing he and Sheldon Creed had near the end of that event. In my opinion, I just think we've seen some great racing. That 17 car, it's a legendary number, of course, to the late Ricky Hendrick. And I really am excited to see the Hendrick car come back. And obviously, it's not for many races. And honestly, I know people get frustrated the fact you see Cup drivers running it. And I would have definitely been cool to see the driver in the lower series get an opportunity to drive that 17 car. But in my honest opinion, it's not many races you're going to see them. They have restrictions in Cup. I don't really care about that kind of stuff anymore. In fact, away from that over the last few years. And it's really exciting to say Hendrick is bringing this car back. Maybe they bring it back for more races in the future. Bring a guy full-time in the lower series from the trucksters, like a Roger Kerr perhaps in the future. Bring him in to Sable or Daniel Dye perhaps, though I don't think those guys are anywhere close to being ready for a full-time ride, though Roger does have some Xfinity Series experience. He's had some decent runs in Xfinity, so he could be a potential possibility. But in my honest opinion, when you look at Hendrick Motorsports and what they've accomplished in the history of Xfinity, it's great that they are officially returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and I think it's going to be really fun to have them back in Xfinity going forward. So I'm excited about that. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Hendrick Motorsports, of course, is returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think they are going to win 1 race or 2 races. They could win all the races for all we know, but I think they're going to be very, very competitive, and I think it's going to be fun to watch all those drivers come back and run with the Hendrick Motorsports. I think it's going to be very, very fun and very exciting to see Hendrick Motorsports is returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2023 once again. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next major story in today's episode, as we are talking about Kimi Raikkonen. Now, I already filmed talking a little bit about Project 91, but right as I got done filming Wednesday's video, Trackhouse Racing officially announced, and Kimi leaked his announcement early, but Kimi Raikkonen is returning to NASCAR this year in 2023, driving the number 91 for Trackhouse Racing, the Project 91 car at Circuit of the Americas. This would be Kimi Raikkonen's second NASCAR Cup Series start, pending, of course, he's able to make it into the show if there's more, because there's a lot of cars that are going to be showing up at the Circuit of the Americas race. But Kimi Raikkonen has already made a start in the NASCAR Cup Series. He drove the 91 car for Project 91 at Watkins Glen and had a very solid run going. He had top 10 and top 15 pace and speed, qualified and practiced very, very well in the event. And Kimi Raikkonen was extremely competitive because he had a fast car. And you go to Circuit Americas with Project 91 with Trackhouse. Think about this last year. Who were the 2 best cars last year at this event at COTA last year? Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain. They both, of course, drive for Trackhouse Racing. I'm not thinking Kimi Raikkonen is going to win, but I think Kimi Raikkonen is going to be very, very competitive. And the fact now that he's getting more and more experience and more acclimated with this car, I think he's going to run extremely well in this event. I think he's going to be very, very competitive. And having him back, you're also going to have a lot of F1 fans, and it's going to bring a lot of fans from F1 into watching NASCAR as well. So we could get an increase in TV ratings. And I think COTA is becoming one of the most anticipated races of the year. There's so many great drivers coming in this event, ex-F1 drivers, ex-drivers from other series coming into play and showing up. And having Kimi Raikkonen come and race with Project 91, I think is going to be really awesome and really, really fun. And I'm looking forward to see him come back. He's always fun to listen to in the media. He really doesn't care, and it's just fun that he's coming back. He wanted to come back and race in NASCAR, and I'm really excited that he is making a return. Now, other questions is, and we know that Project 91 wants to run quite a few more races this year. I would love to maybe in the future, maybe see Scott Dixon come into play, bring Romain Grosjean in. We know Romain's shown some interest in NASCAR. Maybe Marcus Ericsson comes in and drives a Project 91 car. We know the Trackhouse bought Chip Ganassi Racing, so obviously we could see Chip Ganassi's IndyCar program come over and see some of those guys from that come over there. Maybe Max Verstappen, maybe Shane Van Gisbergen. I think the potential possibilities are endless at the moment for the Project 91 car, and I think that's one thing that's really exciting about the Project 91 car is all the endless possibilities that you could see in this series. I think it's just so exciting to see right now what's going on with Project 91 at the moment, and to have Kimi Raikkonen come back and race is going to be fun. I think Kimi does have an outside chance of winning. He's not in favor of the guys that are potential injuries, special injuries that could come into play that race. But I am excited. I think Kimi's going to be very, very competitive. And I think that Trackhouse is going to give him a very strong car. And I think it's just so exciting and so incredible that Kimi Raikkonen is coming back. He was fun and he was really solid because he has not a lot of stock car experience. I think he's going to do better. He's got more experience in the next-gen car now, already one racing experience, and I think he has a really good run at COTA. Plus, he won an F1 race here in 2018 at COTA, so he's experienced at this racetrack, some more experience than even other drivers in this series, and I'm excited that Kimi Raikkonen is coming back with Project 91. It's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting, and I'm excited to see that Kimi Raikkonen is returning with Project 91 this year. Going to be fun stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Jenson Button. As along with a couple other drivers, Jenson Button announced on Race Hub that he will be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut in 2023, but not with a team you think it would be. A lot of people thought it would be with a Chevy team like JTG Doherty, or maybe even the Project 91 car, or maybe even Kaulig Racing. Well, not the case whatsoever. He will be driving the number 15 for Rick Ware Racing for 3 races this season. He will drive at Circuit Americas and make his NASCAR Cup Series debut. He will also run at the Chicago Street Course and will also run at the Indy Road Course later this season. Now, this Rick Ware Racing car will have a Stewart-Haas Racing Alliance, and Mobil 1 is going to sponsor Jenson Button. This is absolutely huge for the sport. Jenson Button, for those who do not know, like Kimi Raikkonen, is an ex-Formula 1 champion. He won the 2009 Formula 1 championship with Braun GP and has been part of things like Extreme E. He's been part of Formula E in the past, and also Jenson Button has won some races. Plus, Jenson Button is, of course, going to be driving the Garage 56 entry. Now, I've seen some people that are a little bit confused that Jenson Button is driving a Ford, considering he's driving the Garage 56 entry, which is a Chevrolet. Why is he driving a Ford? Well, remember when I mentioned Stewart-Haas Racing Alliance and Mobil 1. Mobil 1 has had a pretty big alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing, and Mobil 1 has also had a major alliance with Jenson Button throughout his career. And Jenson Button, and Tony Stewart used to do that commercial, the soda cookies commercial, y'all will probably remember that with the Mobil 1 stuff. And Jenson Button is a legend of racing, and I think it's just so cool that you got Jenson Button coming in and racing in NASCAR. He's been interested in wanting to do it. Maybe he runs it over. There was a joke that Bob Pocker's kind of talking about maybe him taking over the 4 car. I don't think he'll be a favorite for the 4 car, but maybe somehow he decides to go and run full time in NASCAR, which I think will be really fun, but he's got to get acclimated to ovals first if he was decided to do that. But going back to this is absolutely exciting that Jenson Button's coming into play and racing, making his debut. And remember, this 15 car last year was not a soft car. Joey Hand drove this car last year, and he did an amazing and incredible job with this team last year. He was very, very competitive, very quick, led some laps at times last year, yes, on strategy, of course, but we saw this car competing for top 10s and top 15s. And I think Jenson Button, especially now the fact that he's had some experience testing the Garage 56 entry, which is very similar to the next-gen car, considering the fact that the Garage 56 entry is a next-gen car, I think that Jenson Button is going to have a very good chance to be extremely competitive in his debut. And I don't think Jenson Button's going to win by any stretch of imagination, but he's going to be fun to have, and I'm excited about it. You think about the possibilities of how stacked this field is for Circuit Americas and all the additions coming there. You've got potentially Jimmy Johnson also coming back in the 84 car. You got Jordan Taylor in the 9 car. You've got Jenson Button in the 15. And you got Kimi Raikkonen in 91. A dream scenario would be all 4 of those guys going for the win. I think the best chance of a win coming out, though, is going to be Jordan Taylor in that 9 car, because Jordan Taylor has a lot of GT experience, and also he's been part of the Garage 6 entry, and he's won races at COTA. Jordan Taylor, I think, is going to be the best shot for one of these 4 to win. But I think having those 4 come out potentially, and Jimmy Johnson said this is a race he wants to run as well. And then the other thing about other possibilities, MBM with Boris Head, perhaps, that could be a possibility as well. That's a wild potential possibility that we could end up seeing. But I think it's just so exciting to see. We got drivers like Jenson Button, Jordan Taylor, Kimi Raikkonen, Jimmy Johnson. It's just absolutely, COTA has become one of the most anticipated races of the 2023 season. And then, of course, Chicago Street Course and all the other possibilities there with Jenson Button coming out and racing on the Indy Road Course track, having experience there. That's going to be really, really fun. I think the goal for Jenson Button is to get experience and run as competitive as he can. But having Jenson Button in the world of racing, in the world of NASCAR is just absolutely amazing, exciting to see, and I'm looking forward to he'll be making his NASCAR debut. It's really exciting stuff, and I'm excited to see that Jenson Button is making his NASCAR debut at COTA. It's going to be very fun to watch, and I'm glad he's coming to NASCAR drive for Rick Ware Racing. So, that is going to be for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on so you know if I win a video that's go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links to description below with that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. How excited are you to see that Jenson Button and Kimi Raikkonen are racing at COTA? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What are your thoughts about Eric Jones being a potential possibility to drive the 4 car and Hendrick Motorsports returning the Xfinity Series this year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We might have a second video on the channel today. I'm not confirming or denying that today. Tomorrow on the channel, you're going to have potentially 1 or 2 videos. You have the Xfinity Series review from Phoenix and also the potential possibility of the starting lineup video getting released. And then Sunday will be the Cup review from Phoenix and a lot of other content on the way as well. I might be in the next couple weeks releasing the silly season predictions for 2024. That could come out the next 2 weeks. I might wait till April to release that. We'll just have to wait and see what happens though. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.